to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we'll start tonight with the county meeting. So I'll hand it over to Jason for county.
Thank you, Rita. All right, for county tonight, we'll call the county commissioners meeting to order for October 23rd. Announcements: the county commissioner meeting is being video and audio recorded. Is there any public comment tonight that's not on the agenda, on the county agenda? Seeing none, there's no new business that I know of. Is there a motion for approval of minutes of September 25th?
So, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0. Approval of payroll and treasury warrants.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 4-0. Approval of pending contracts for October 23rd. Any questions on that? Like a natural resources grant.
No, I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 4-0. Over to real estate matters. We have a private owner request for approval and execution of license agreement regarding house relocations at 115 and 117 Baxter Road. Mr. Ken Bogrant's going to give us a little intro on this.
Good afternoon. This is a matter that has been approved by both Concom and the zoning board with respect to a variance. And the idea is to be able to move the house so that it goes to a different part of the property and that it extends about 7 feet into the town property. The reason for this is because of to protect the house from falling over the bank as the erosion is dealing with Baxter Road. This has been reviewed by town council. There is a license agreement which is the same as was previously done with respect to a similar problem with a property at 109 Baxter Road, and there is a one big beach easement that comes along with this back to us, to the town, as a result as compensation for the license agreement that is put in place. And so it is our recommendation that this be proceeded with and as proposed.
Any questions for Ken? Comments?
I guess my one question is that is this exactly the same agreement more or less that we had with the previous property?
Yes. It's the same as with the property at 106 or 109 Baxter Road.
Some of the things I think about looking at this now, like with what we've learned, is the previous one. I agree with the previous. It is similar,
Yeah.
and it was a good thing we did the previous one. Things I think we could improve upon. I don't know if you guys have discussed it. Is some sort of indemnification so they don't sue us if we have to abandon the road at some day?
Well, what we have gotten them to agree to is that there's no objection to the existing right-of-way road coming in off of Sankaty Road to provide access to Baxter Road.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So they've agreed to that.
Yeah.
If at some point we abandon Sankey Road, we don't want, that's one. Can we sort of put that in place? Another one is the last one we gave it in so that's one. That's number one. And I guess yours is partly to that, or.
Well, the thing is that it deals with providing that there's no objection to providing that the town provides access in this new manner as opposed to the existing manner of Baxter Road.
I don't know if I'm clear on that.
So it's essentially, they wouldn't argue if we had to have alternate access to Baxter, that they would.
That was the discussion. Yes, that was the whole reason, to provide there's no objection to the alternate access that the town might have to provide.
Sorry, your mic I don't think is working.
Oh, okay. I was told to just wait a minute and it will work,
Is that work?
if that's a problem.
I think, does it work? No.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk to the.
Does your left one, right one work?
Test.
If you take that, please.
The question I have is if we do need to
put in alternate access, and I think this is what you're getting at, is can we abandon Baxter without them holding us accountable?
That's what I'm asking.
I don't know the answer to that question.
That's one of our concern. That's one of my concerns, and probably the board concerns, is that the town is required to provide access, and so there's different issues in that area if and when there's a breach. And with some of the agreements we have now, we've been threatened that if we don't agree to certain things, then those agreements are all null and void. And so what I'm sort of thinking is, well, as we do these sorts of negotiations with neighbors there to move into the roadway, et cetera, we should be making sure that they are not party to lawsuits against us in the future, especially if we're enabling them to either move it and live it themselves, or if they can move it and flip it and get out, then we should certainly not have that problem with the next person that comes in. The person we have now might be fine and understand it, and probably is, but who they sell it to, I want to make sure that we are not in a adversarial relationship with them because we aren't providing the road that we require by state law, or we aren't building at our expense, we're not building a geotube for them. So there's a lot of stuff that swirled in this last rendition of this that I think could potentially be improved in these, improved in these documents. So anyway, I'm just bringing those up for comment.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, was that level of detail discussed, or?
That was not.
Okay.
Does the alternate access, does that carry through, that agreement carry through on a sale? The
agreement
not
provides
objecting.
that there would be no objection with respect to the town providing the alternate access. So,
And that if they sold it, the new owners would have to agree to the same?
I would just, I'm pretty sure that that's the case. Stephen, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's on the deed.
Yep.
Matt, did you have something else? You said two things.
Yeah, my two.
Was that the two?
Yeah,
Okay.
my two were, we just want to make sure that if we're working cooperatively, we want to make sure that it's written in the document so we aren't uncooperative later on a couple of big issues that are coming down the pike at us.
Well, what I thought we had covered with it was with respect to the alternate access and making sure that they agreed that the alternate access was satisfactory and they would not object to the town providing alternate access through that way. I didn't get into the issue of whether or not the town had the right to abandon the road.
Right. There was road abandonment, and then there's, sort of joining a citizens group to, sue us for not following through on on SBPF, on that whole thing. There's threats of the alternative access on the north end not being triggered because we haven't acted in good faith. There's all sorts of stuff that's been swirling,
Right.
and I think these documents are our opportunity to, solidify them a lot at a time if we have a chance.
Right,
Maybe
understand.
I'm being, being a little too careful, but I think there are legal implications of some of these that I want to make sure we are fully exploring and protecting the town to the best of our abilities.
Yeah,
And there's one big beach easement in this agreement,
that is correct.
all the way down. Okay.
Yes.
Is it, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, back to my point, because I do agree particularly with the road abandonment, I wonder if it's implied that if we're seeking alternate access, then it's because we've had to abandon the road. So I would either want to clarify that within the request, unless it's an assumption that can be made based on the fact that we're pursuing alternate access, and therefore also agree not to object to an abandonment of the road. Does that make sense?
Steve, can you speak to that?
So Stephen Cohen, just for the record, I don't know that the two are connected because the alternative access would most likely be based on a breach, not abandonment. Abandonment would be abandoning the whole road, whereas a breach is, locational. Does that clarify?
It does, yes, thank you. And that, I think, in terms of longer-term planning, a breach would be an emergency scenario. I think in terms of long-term planning and developing a strategy for coastal resiliency, I think working in how the town approaches abandonment with property owners is as important as a breach.
Well, I think the abandonment term is the is the, sort of, there's a legal definition, there's a way, we've all got that in our packet, previously, there's a way that you abandon a road, and it's very difficult. So it's, and the state hasn't caught up, the state rules haven't caught up, because of sea level rise and everything that's going on, in my opinion, really haven't caught up with the reality that places like the Cape and we're gonna face. And I don't, if we're in a, positive relationship with these neighbors, we were, in any of those areas, that's one thing. If we end up in an adversarial relationship, then we could be facing every single neighbor, saying, hey, you can't abandon it, you still have to provide it. That's the way it's written, is you have to provide, if a property becomes landlocked, it's our responsibility to do whatever is necessary to get them unlandlocked. So it's, that's why I'm saying it's a very high standard that the state still holds on these things. And so anyway.
Is this something that we want to look at for this particular property or down the road with future? I asked that because if we're going to do it for this one, I think there's a time constraint with them trying to move the house as soon as possible. And how long would it take if we were to add this in? And
yeah, I want them to move it. Like I'm in favor of this. I'm in favor of them moving back, and I think that's all a good thing. But I also am in favor of sort of making sure that if they're willing to work cooperatively to allow those two things to be added to that, I would make a motion that we protect, get town legal counsel to add those two protections and allow the chair to sign it. I would do that as a motion, because I know you guys have to move forward, but I want to make sure that we're doing that.
So is that the motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve it with the understanding that we have town council protect the town in the case of an abandonment or future litigation.
No bad language.
Add language to those two effects so that we are protected. And as long as they agree with that, I'm in favor of voting for this.
In case of abandonment or
Future litigation, I don't want to find, I don't want this homeowner or a future homeowner to join in litigation against the town on a bunch of the other issues out there. If we're going to,
and is it the license agreement and the one big beach, or are we just?
Well, the One Bay Beach easement is granted by my client to the
and
town.
it's already required.
So I think what Matt's asking for is an indemnification or waiver or hold harmless within the license on any road abandonment by, I think it's the county that owns the road. Is that right?
Yeah, county, and that we, and we don't want to be in an adversarial situation on some of the other issues out there too. I'm not just talking about the road. I'm talking road abandonment. I'm talking, the other issues that may potentially face us. I hope we don't face them. I hope we negotiate face to face and get there.
Yeah.
But if we don't, I don't want to see.
Sure. So I don't want to.
Hold on 1 second. So we're understanding the motion. Can we get a second for discussion?
Second for discussion.
All right, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, sure. So my only concern with the and everything else is that it's very broad, and town council might tell you that it's questionably enforceable if we start getting into you can't sue the town for anything ever. I don't know if that's going to hold up, and I'm not advising you that it won't, but
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying anything to do with, beach nourish, the issues that are out there. If
erosion issues.
Yeah, if there's a dog bite or something else, we're not talking about that type of thing. But I'm talking about the issues that are facing us in that area is what I'm concerned about. And I would hope that town council could write those. I don't know.
Sure. So could I just make a comment on that? I get Matt's point. I actually think from a town point of view, it's a good point, but it is holding my client to a little bit of a different standard than everybody else on the road at a time where they really need to move the house. We certainly appreciate the town allowing this, but it's also putting them at a significant disadvantage compared to every other homeowner out there. It's a real policy change at the last minute with regard to one property. If you're willing to let this go the way it was done for other people, I'd request that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Do you feel it's a policy change?
Well, I think it is doing it differently than the prior agreement, and so I think it's that classic scenario of do you make that change and start now, or when do you start? Does this come up again, and then we make the change, try and make a change like this at the last minute? So, yeah, I don't know how long it would take. I would like to see it move forward, but I don't want it to hold them up for months. So I'd be interested to know how quickly town council could provide us something. Again, for me, the road abandonment is the key piece. And I'd be fine with what Matt said previously, having the chair sign it to keep things moving forward.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern is just the timing of it, and if going to town council is going to hold us back, and we just did this for 109 Baxter, why kind of change it up right now when this is kind of a time urgent request?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. These issues I've broached many times. They're somewhat sensitive, and I've still broached these topics many times. I think that, you know, because resiliency is something that has to be thought of in all of these documents. If we continue to, if you make a mistake or you find a way to improve it, you shouldn't be stuck with how you did it before. I mean, that's sort of nonsensical. It's the, you know, sort of the definition of being crazy. Is doing the same thing over and over again. And, you know, if you can improve it, you should improve it. So I don't, you know, I'm not asking, I don't think for anything burdensome to these guys, I think, and I want to move it along, but.
My only thoughts are having no policy change behind it. It's kind of, it's smart. What's the motion, Matt? Just make it it's a one-off suggestion. We have learned from the past. I'd be more comfortable if it was just road abandonment and take away any language for anything else, coastal erosion, because it just gets confusing. So town council has a very specific item to go after, and it can get it done quickly. If that's what everybody's concern is the road abandonment down the road, which is going to happen.
Yeah, mine is both. If we are not working cooperatively with the neighbors out there, I'm also worried about future litigation on 4 or 5 specific issues out there. So, you know, anyway.
And it is a trade for using town land, essentially, is that the non-litigation. I do see your point. I think it's a matter of, are we going to discuss this again, or are we going to keep making the same mistake? So,
I think regardless, moving forward, we should always have that language in the agreements.
I mean, I don't see any problem with respect to doing it moving forward. I thought we had addressed the issue with respect to the fact that we provided access through the road, and we provided that there could be no objection to them complaining that this was the way that you access their property now, as opposed to the ability to get to it through Baxter Road. So the issue of abandonment had not been on the horizon whatsoever, but it could be on the horizon moving forward. I just think that in these circumstances and in the timing, perhaps the board could consider moving forward with the documentation as it is, and having then an understanding that anything moving forward with respect to any area of the island where we have a problem with respect to the erosion, that the abandonment issue becomes a part of any license agreement that we do.
Yeah, that's not the motion on the floor. So are you guys ready for a vote, or do you want to ask more questions?
Yeah, I think I want to clarify how long it will take. Is there any estimate to go through town council? Because I know this has to be moved by November.
Weeks or a month? Maybe a week? I have no idea.
If we're just talking about the indemnification language about the road, that should be very quick.
Correct.
If we're talking about all litigation going forward, I think I'm not sure how we're going to capture exactly what that is.
That'd be very difficult to capture because of the fact that we'd have to try and anticipate any potential type of issue that could arise with respect to the issues in that area. So, and
we're not lawyers, and we're playing. You know, I would think we could do it, but I see where this is going. But I think we could ask them at least and not assume. But
so if we take the vote now, I'm going to vote against it because of all the extra things that we don't know, just all the what we're calling the other stuff. But if it's just road abandonment, I have no problem with that adding in because it can be done timely. It makes sense.
I mean, I don't know if Matt's open to an amendment that would be request that the hold harmless for road abandonment and or breach, and not objecting to that, and that we request an opinion on town council going forward, what the language would be to protect the town from litigation in relation to erosion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I have no problem. I think we should do that. We shouldn't have to make a vote for that. That's stuff that is, should be common practice when we're looking at something like this. So I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of that before we even get to this level. So that's fine, but I still am pushing for the other. I understand it, and if you guys want to vote it for just the road amendment, I don't have an issue. I'd like to see it move forward. But on the record, I want to be on the record that we have some very, some very big issues coming forward that, and that we should be, thinking big picture and setting ourselves up in a, sort of a cooperative manner, not, So anyway, so.
So you accepted the friendly? Did you get that, Erica?
Did he accept it?
Did you accept it?
No, I didn't.
No.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't accept it. Oh,
I
okay.
didn't. I accepted that stuff should happen.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not accepting it as part of my
Okay.
motion. You should,
All
if
right.
you don't, you should defeat my motion and do
Okay.
what you want to do.
All right. Ready for a vote? All those in favor?
Yes.
So my motion, yes.
Okay. That's two. All those opposed?
No.
Opposed? So that does not move forward. It's tied 2-2.
But can we make an alternate motion? So my alternate motion would be that we accept the one big beach easement, accept the recommendation, we add in language regards indemnification, hold harmless on road abandonment, and that we get an opinion from town council on future situations like this regards to holding the town harmless for or not entering into litigation against the town on erosion issues. Does that capture it?
I'm trying to understand the
Yeah.
opinion that you're looking for, Rita. The fact is that what I think you're trying to do is to get the town to give us language with respect to a hold harmless relative to the town, the people holding the town harmless with respect to any claims or damages as a result of the abandonment of the road by the town.
Correct. So that's
one issue.
So I guess what it really is they accept the alternate access in the case of breach or road abandonment.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's the simplest version. So it's not just breach, it's not just emergency, but if it comes to where the town is abandoning the road, that they continue to agree to the alternate access and don't object.
Right.
Just for the record, it's the county. I mean,
County.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. So that's in terms of moving it forward for the license and the big beach, and then it's within my motion is an additional request that that town council for future situations like this provides us an opinion on how to protect ourselves from litigation
Right.
related to erosion.
Okay, but the opinion does not have to be done prior to the execution of the documentation. It is something that we request town opinion to give to the county and the town.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Christy, you second that?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion?
Yeah, I'll let you can vote it and then I'll.
No, go ahead.
My point again, it's this these global issues we really need to be thinking about, and if you have a partnership with somebody, you don't sue your partner. Like it's sort of, you can't have it both ways. And so if we're partnering with people, then we shouldn't be getting threatened. If you don't do it our way, we're going to sue you. It's sort of, I'm saying if we're going to partner, let's be good partners and let's expect our partners to be good partners and let's all work together. And I just think that's what I'm sort of asking for. And I'm not asking town council to predict the future. There's no way to predict the future and say, oh, this is the lawsuit that's going to happen, and this one is, and this one is, and this one is. We have no idea. There's 5-10 different ways this thing could go south in the next year or two. So I'm not saying that, I'm just saying blanket, we don't want people who are partners with us and working with us, being part of lawsuits and funding lawsuits against us. So I'm trying to get that policy, that thought process into there, and I'd like it to be there. It's not just an SBPF issue. This is going to be an issue island-wide. And so, so how do we, how does the island make sure that we're just not running the clock, on these things and arguing about it? It's going to be, messy and contentious and take a long time. So I'm trying to move us more that direction.
Can I ask a quick question, actually, about if there is a one big beach easement, though, do they have the same ability to have geotubes, or to, if there is an erosion issue, if there's a one big beach easement, do they even have the same standing?
Yeah, the easement allows for erosion protection and also public access.
Okay, so it doesn't really, in the event of a situation where, say they did one in this scenario, they did want geotubes, they have the same standing as they did before the one big beach easement?
It doesn't prevent erosion protection.
Okay.
I would say it's silent to those issues. It doesn't. Yeah.
That's correct.
Right. What it does is it gives the town or the public through the town public access rights on that land as it erodes. If you look behind you, you can see where it says coastal beach and then it says bottom of the bank. You can see that the beach is significantly on town land. So right now, there's the easement area, the geotubes or whatever erosion protection would be installed would actually be on town land, which is one of the reasons why there isn't any on this property.
Okay, thank you.
Ready for a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1.
Thank you very much.
Can I get clarification? Was that for A and B?
Yes.
Okay.
And before we leave it, just it's if you read the one big beach easements, and it's sort of educational based on what we were talking about last meeting, purposes including and it's up to the dune edge, it's rolling,
Up to the high water
mark, it's
high water.
rolling, it's for other uses,
Yeah.
and with it, this was in 0304. With it was responsibility on the part of the town, beach management plan. And this is when we had a beach advisory committee, and
Right.
there was a different thing, and that was the group that would sort of take in and handle a lot of these complaints at the time. And so it was sort of a different setup.
Yeah, it went for about 10 years, and then it fell apart, and it hasn't been active since about 2014.
Yes, and so when I was talking about that last week, and us needing that again, and needing Park and Rec to be more, or them to be more active, that would be, a positive, helpful for the town, in my opinion, because it would surface some of these issues more quickly. You wouldn't have someone like Scott White complaining for 10 years and then
Nothing happening. Because there wasn't a voice or a point of contact that could be contacted as the linchpin.
So I think reading those documents even reminded me more clearly of how we used to do it, and
Right.
how maybe we have to get back
But
to that.
the thing too is that as a town, we recognized that in fact there wasn't an absolute right to the beach, and so the whole one big beach easement program was in fact to be able to start to give the citizens the rights to that, where they were in terms of the town council's interpretation of law belonging to the individual landowners.
Well, we recognized there was an absolute right, but we were going to fight about it, so let's just do it.
Do it in a constructive way, where in fact you create a win-win situation as opposed to a fight.
Yes, and
That's right.
that was the idea of it. We've sort of abandoned that idea slightly, but that was the idea of that entire process, was they would donate these things that we already owned, but they would be able to value them and get benefit from them, the tax benefits, et cetera, and that we would, continue to do what we've done for 350 years. But with that becomes a responsibility to have things in place
To be able to monitor it.
to monitor
enforce
and
it,
deal
yeah.
with the problems.
Correct.
And it comes the right to have to close occasionally as a board if we have to close. So anyway, I just think I wanted to bring it up again. I can't myself. Sorry.
Thank you, everyone. It was a good discussion. Thank you, Mr. Collin. Thank you, Ken. Any commissioner reports, comments? Probably not. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. My motion carries. Thank you. Over to you, Madam
right.
Chair.
We'll call to order the October 23rd Select Board meeting. No changes to the agenda, so we'll accept the agenda as is, and announcements.
This meeting is being video and audio recorded, and we have a Nantucket Alliance for Substance Abuse Prevention request for proclamation of Red Ribbon Week, which is this week, October 23rd to 30th, 2019. I don't know if anybody's here.
Yes,
Yep.
Sue Minute is here.
Okay. If you would like, sure.
Show it on screen? Yeah, let me just pull it right up.
So this week's theme is Send a Message, Stay Drug-Free. Whereas alcohol, tobacco, and drug abuse in the United States prevents millions of people from reaching their full potential in school, in the workplace, and in their communities. And whereas the 2019 annual observance of Red Ribbon Week provides Nantucketers the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to healthy lifestyles and to celebrate the safe, healthy choices that most young people and adults make every day on Nantucket by wearing and displaying red ribbons and sharing information. And so now, therefore, be it resolved that the Nantucket Select Board does hereby proclaim October 23rd to 30th, 2019 as Nantucket Red Ribbon Week, and encourage all citizens, businesses, and private agencies, media, religious, and educational institutions to support and promote activities that raise awareness and encourage prevention of underage substance use and adult substance misuse. As well, we call on Nantucket residents and businesses to wear or display a red ribbon throughout the week in recognition of their commitment to a healthy lifestyle free of substance abuse for residents of all ages in our Nantucket community.
Thank
We all
you.
have red ribbons on the table.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. Okay, we have underway planning for the 2020 annual town meeting, which is Saturday, April 4th. The warrant is open for citizen article submittals until November 18th at 4. There's a packet in our office and in the town clerk's office for citizens who are interested in submitting warrant articles. And it is also online, so if people are interested, we encourage them to come and get it or look at it online. And there is no board meeting next Wednesday, October 30th.
And should we just comment, we might take a quick recess to go thank Ernie
Yeah,
upstairs.
but we don't want him to know about it, so don't,
Oops.
anyways, don't.
Hope he's
know.
not listening.
Yeah,
Doubt
he's
it.
not listening. So the idea is that when Concom adjourns their meeting, it'll be his final meeting. Just before that, we go upstairs and the board can recognize him, and then we come back down and finish our meeting.
Who's telling us that it's over?
Jeff is going to text several people in hopes that somebody will notice.
Nominate Greg to be on top of that.
This is public comment, an opportunity for anyone to comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Seeing none, we have no new business, so we will move on to the approval of payroll warrants and treasury warrants.
Move to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Question on the bathing beach, the sewer. Can we have a quick?
Is that contracts or?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, I got that. When we got
Yeah.
there. Okay.
So that passes. And moving on to pending contracts.
That's it.
Yeah. Any questions?
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, no, the question, what, Bathing Beach Road, sewer?
David could explain it a little bit further if he wants, but this is a budgeted item that was a capital project in this past year's town meeting. That area, I believe, the infrastructure needs to be replaced.
And are we taking into consideration resiliency, sea level rise, those kind of issues? Was it engineered into this, or, and if so, how?
Yes, thank you, David Gray. We've had a lot of project problems down there over the years, especially with a lot of II. So what we have designed is going to be a new system coming out of the building into a grease interceptor, an external grease interceptor to stop a lot of the grease, into a watertight pump chamber, and we're going to be pumping it down to North Beach Street instead of having it gravity because that line is so bad. And then that whole line will be flow filled or sealed so that we can't get any more II into the system.
Right.
So that was all taken into consideration, watertight covers, elevations, height, and everything like that. So that has all been looked at, yes.
Awesome, great, thank you. Yeah, just for the public to know, we're getting a lot of comments about the entire Brant Point Jetties area, and this is gonna be something we're not gonna, it's gonna be the rest of our lifetimes dealing with these things.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Move to approve pending contracts?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. Okay, moving on to real estate matters. We have a request. Sorry, that's commission. County. Moving on to citizen departmental requests. We have a request for waiver of a sewer connection permit fee for a covenant lot at 17B Tashima.
Hi, Tucker Holland, housing specialist. And we have the applicant, Caitlin Parsons, here as well. I think this is pretty straightforward under the board's sewer waiver policy. Caitlin and her family are developing a covenant home and are simply looking for a waiver on the sewer connection fee.
No problem for me. This is part of our policy. Yeah.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Congrats.
passes.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
I just wanted to comment, that's the third one we've had in the past 2 months, so congrats to Affordable Housing Trust, Housing Nantucket, and everybody that's putting these covenant lots on the market.
Okay, so we'll move on to real estate matters. Number one is the request for approval and execution of purchase and sale agreement at parcels 5 and 6 Lincoln Ave.
This is the Ken Bogrand, real estate specialist. This is the final conveyance in the process of clarifying the layout of Lincoln Avenue. Part of the transaction is that the property owner had the right to, in fact, has the right to subdivide the parcel into 4 lots. What was made a part of this documentation is the fact that this transfer does not create any additional right to subdivide. So while the parcel is slightly increased, it does not create any additional rights in the homeowner. And so it is our recommendation that we go forward. We have already previously approved the changes to the 2 other parcels closer to as part of Lincoln Avenue. And so it's our recommendation that we move forward and accept and move forward with this transaction.
Great. Any questions from the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Number 2 is the request for approval and execution of license agreement with Forsyth 48 on Matagasham Valley Road.
Okay. This has been before you before, and when we were here before, Matt had a question with respect to the adequacy of the parking relative to this. After that meeting, we went out to the property with Rob McNeil and Jeff Carlson, and we took a look at the parking area, which is sort of move the arrow. It's right in there. Okay, and right now, the way that's set up, it has very limited parking. What we were able to do is with the DPW walk through and be able to create 20 parking spaces in that area that would be consistent with the topography of the area. And we've checked with Jeff Carlson, and there are no Concom issues with respect to that. And so it's our recommendation that we move forward with this. This is a transaction that we're having to do at this point in time because the actual original transaction of selling the property to the homeowner is still tied up in land court. We've been working on that for years, and this is a solution to solve the problem with respect to the parking on, when you're looking at this on the left-hand side or just to the right of where that little dot is on the that person's property. We have also spoken to the airport with respect to 3 additional potential parking locations along Matagasham Road, 1 up there, and then 2 all the way at the end on the left-hand side that's off of that map, which is near the airport property. The airport feels that this is something that could go forward, but they need to address the issues with respect to see if there are no MESA issues relative to the property. So we're not bringing that forward at this point in time, but we're also looking at potentially some additional parking spaces over time once we can get the issues that are of concern to the airport straightened out. So at this point in time, we're recommending that we go forward with this transaction, having addressed the issue with respect to parking down where the area was before.
Madam Chair, I think there's also 5 spots along the drive.
The thing is that we're not going to do those along that side because we're concerned that would provide access, limited access down to the parking area.
Okay, so that's off the table. Okay.
And that's what I wanted to see is if we're getting something like this, before we vote on it, we need to know what exists, what's gonna, what exists, what are we giving, what are we taking away, and and what is the future beach access in that area? Is there a one big beach easement when our property erodes? Is there parking on the airport property, et cetera? We should be thinking about sort of the global issues and all the issues.
True, and the land beyond the parking area towards the ocean already belongs to the town.
Yes.
So there's not a need for a one big beach easement with respect to this particular property. But with respect to some of the other yard sales that were done, one big beach easements were created and are in place with respect to those properties.
And we're losing, like I think it's 11 feet a year in some of these areas, so it won't be long before there will be a need.
Yeah,
So
right.
so in the thought process, we should be thinking about these on places that, don't abut but will abut in 10 years. It's sort of, so.
And there's also a land bank parking lot to the right a little bit. That's
There's a
about
big
25
parking.
spots.
There's a big parking lot to the right that the land bank has for quite a number of cars.
I don't know where it is.
It's right in that area right there at that turn right in the road, right in that area.
Here?
Yeah, right in that area.
It's further down, but it's fine.
Yeah.
There's two big spaces where you can get 40 to 50 cars.
Yeah.
I know my main concern when we saw this last time was that in order to replace the parking spaces we would be losing, we would have to clear and cause a lot of damage down by the water. But it seems that that's been clarified, that we can create the spaces.
And it's really not very much work. It was just the fact that the topography was a little bit over bumpy, and so some weeds grow in there, and so it's going to be relatively easy in terms of being able to level that off and to be able to line out so there's easy parking for at least 20 cars.
Mm-hmm. Great. Any other questions or concerns?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously.
And my only other comment, in the future on these, because we didn't get a one big beach easement, here we should be asking for that. In something this close to the water and in this situation, I think we really have to be aware of it.
Well, if the person doesn't own to the water, to the beach,
That's fine, they don't, but when the point is when they do, it will kick in. It wouldn't matter.
yeah.
Attorney Arthur Reed, I represent the property owner in this situation. Bear in mind, this is the license that we're dealing with right now. When and if, but when,
If it ever gets out of it.
the land court ultimately issues the title to the town that enables the yard sale to be completed. At that time, the issue of putting on what I would call a springing one big beach easement. In other words, if and when at some time in the future, some portion of the lot becomes beach,
Right.
that the portion that is, in accordance with the rules established by the DEP and Concom and falls within the definition of beach, would be subjected to a one big beach easement. We certainly wouldn't have any problem with dealing with that. But again, that comes down the road.
I understand, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
That was the point, is these, even though they're, half a lot away from the beach, they're gonna be beachfront very soon.
Well, in this, it will probably end up being the payment
Yes.
for the deeding that property down the line.
Right.
Right, actually, that's right, because that just saved us some money in terms of the yard sale. How about
Or a
that?
portion of.
Great, thank you. And number 3 in real estate matters, the request for approval and execution of grant of permission for conveyance regarding parcel E off of Low Beach Road.
Right. Parcel E is a small parcel. 56 Maury Lane and Low Beach Road are contiguous parcels. What happened was that when we did the yard sale, it went to Maury Lane. Now there's a request to have it attached to one Low Beach Road. What happens is that as a result, both of them were undersized lots for zoning in Sconset. So what happens now is that by attaching it to Low Beach Road, it makes that a conforming lot for zoning and leaves Maury Lane still an unconforming lot, but not any less unconforming than it was before, because both of them were unconforming. So the benefit of this is that we create a conforming lot with respect to Low Beach Road, and we keep Maury Lane as an unconforming lot with the same size. By transferring it over, there's extra 300 square feet or whatever it is of buildability with respect to it, but it's not any more than was there before when it was on the other lot. It doesn't create any additional right to create additional subdivision or anything like that. So it seems to me a fairly straightforward transaction. There's a benefit to the town in that we have created a conforming lot, and we have left the other one as the same non-conforming lot that it was before this. So it's our recommendation to move forward with this.
Any questions?
Are they the same owners for both lots?
They at one point they were, but they are different now.
They're different now?
Yeah.
What's the agreement between the two owners that enable this to go one way instead of the other?
I'd have to ask counsel for that. I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
I represent the owners of the Low Beach parcel, and simply in discussion with their neighbors, my clients had purchased the property from the original parties to the transaction, and at that time there was some question as to whether the people on Maury Lane, who didn't have any plans to do anything with their property, were interested in the strip. They wound up acquiring it. If they hadn't acquired it, then the owners of the Low Beach Road would have been given second preference to buy it. So they're neighbors, they've become friendly, and they've decided that they could work out an arrangement to transfer it, which does some benefit for the Low Beach Road parcel, again, just in terms of the placement of structures. We've already been before the Board of Appeals on this. The Board of Appeals has granted the relief to allow this to take place unanimously.
So there wasn't a sale. It was a friendly. They didn't sell it.
A friendly deal. Yeah.
Friendly deal. Did they sell it? Did they sell the title to this to them?
Well, nothing's been transferred yet.
Right.
But there will be a transfer from the Maury Lane parcel to the Maury Lane owners of the yellow parcel up on the map.
The reason I'm asking if there's a sale, I'm probably being a little convoluted. The reason I'm asking is we've set a certain price through our yard sale program for these, and if these are actually then in friendly transactions being sold again, I would, for my own benefit, I was just wondering are we setting our value properly? So I'm just asking from I guess we'll see if that's a sale. We'll see. Yard sale will be able to see that because it'll be a property transfer hopefully,
right?
And we'll see that. But I'm just wondering if anyway.
Just to clarify, so there's no additional footprint that they can build on, but it would help with setbacks and things essentially in terms of the placement of the structure.
It obviously provides some additional footprint to the Low Beach Road parcel, but it eliminates the additional footprint that the Maury Lane parcel would have had available to it. It just switches it from one lot to the other.
Okay.
The overall amount of ground cover would remain the same.
Okay, overall between the two lots, essentially.
Between the two lots. It's a closed system, so to speak.
And then shifts the setbacks.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Nope.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on to town manager's report.
Okay, first up, we've got our first quarter fiscal 2020 budget reports. This is sort of phase one with the general fund, Our Island Home, and solid waste. And at your next meeting, you'll have the remainder of the enterprise funds. So I think Finance Director is going to take us through the general fund.
Good evening, thank you. As the town manager indicated, this is the first quarter, which we always kind of let everybody know is only 3 months in, so there's still a long way to go. Even though revenue was down about 1% on a year-over basis for the first quarter, I'm not overly concerned just because some of it was related to, with motor vehicle excise tax, a lot of it was related to the massive, large amount of collections that we had done from prior year balances over the course of fiscal 19. And it's also dependent on when the Department of Motor Vehicles sends us the other excise commitments on a calendar year basis, because they're all not within each fiscal year. So they're typically a lot smaller from July to October, and then the large one is in February of every fiscal year. One positive note, which I'm sure that everybody will be a little bit excited about, is the fact that we collected about $653,000 in rooms tax, more than the same quarter last year. So last year we collected for the first quarter, and I want to remind everybody the first quarter for the payment of rooms tax is from June, July, and August, and you get it in September, and then in December we'll get September, October, and November. So last year we collected, I'll go to the number here, $1.7 million, and this year in rooms tax we collected $2.35 million. So we have reached out to the state to find out how much additional information they can give us, so we can try to make some logical connections to what is related to the expansion of the local option tax, but we're working with them to see what information we can actually get from them. When Department of Revenue was here on Monday, they did say that there is some information they can give us, not down to a granular level, but relative to how many people have registered with the Department of Revenue. So we're going to try to see what those numbers look like and try to see if we can draw some correlations to this. Overall, other revenues, building permits were down a little bit, but we certainly monitor this on a monthly basis internally, and if it continues to be persistent, we'll talk to the building department about what they're seeing and see if there's any cause for concern or anything like that. Expenses, the first quarter, usually a little bit of an increase, simply because there's some prepayments or some one-time payments. We have debt service payments in July, so the first quarter always is pretty high in terms of that. We pay the entire Barnstable County assessment and things of that nature. So overall, the general fund is really online and in target with where we would expect in the first quarter. We're pretty comfortable with where it is at this point and don't see a lot of issues heading into the second quarter. But again, Ally and the rest of the people on my staff in the department are looking at this pretty much after every warrant on a weekly basis. The treasurer's looking at revenue, and we're having discussions very frequently on where things are ending up and if we see any issues. So right now I think we're moving in the right direction still. Capital projects, there's about $2.3 million spent in the first quarter, as the list there highlighted by a substantial amount related to the fire station, some improvements to the 6FG area. We've been focusing on stormwater, and there's continuing design work for the Marine Department building, and the fire department replaced the SCBA's that we had, and then some town repairs that we had made out of the article from 2016. We did not issue any debt in the first quarter of in 2020. As you know, the last meeting you signed all the debt, so that part of this particular, we did issue about just over $8 million worth of debt in the second quarter, which will all be put into this chart. We still maintain with Moody's the AAA rating, and we're discussing with Standard & Poor's the potential of them coming out in May when we do the issue to just do a surveillance and a discussion and hopefully get an upgrade to AAA from them as well. And then the market investment report. We are actually having another investment firm is coming in to kind of give us an overview of what they can do. The treasurer is reviewing this and trying to make a determination if we would like to move away. I know that we had previously discussed that Morgan Stanley was getting out of the municipal business. We were fortunately one of the clients that Morgan Stanley decided was worthy enough to continue to provide services to, but we're continuing to look at this, and the new treasurer has some different ideas about how to potentially do a little bit better. So we're bringing in another firm tomorrow to sit down and have some conversations with.
I see you tracking the fees. I think that's a good thing.
We are tracking the
fees. And bringing in someone else may help that.
Yes. So, did you want to be the one, or did you want me to?
Well, okay, so you've probably seen our free cash number. So, I don't like to talk about it very much because people start trying to spend it immediately. So I just want to remember to have a caution. So Brian's going to give us a little bit of an overview of it. And I just want to, you're going to hear me being a broken record about this over and over. There may be an economic downturn coming down the line, so we don't want to spend it all in one sitting. We want to be very careful about how we allocate this money, and we may want to put some into the stabilization fund per our policy. And we're not totally at our policy level yet, I don't think. So this may be a good opportunity to get us there. And so I just really want to caution people, let's not spend it all right off the bat. I wanted Brian to give a little bit of an overview because it is a significant amount of free cash.
So DOR was originally supposed to come on October 7th, and due to the weather, they were not able to come until Monday. So they came and they did the certification on site for us. And the free cash certification, certified free cash as of July 1st, 2019 is $10.3 million. It was let me look, actually, so I give you the correct number. It was $9.5 million last year, so it's about an $800,000 increase over last year. The town manager asked me to kind of go over what was some of the largest key contributors to that. And the reality is that last year, as you know, during the budget process, we were very concerned about the solid waste enterprise fund and our island home enterprise fund. So internally, as we were going through the budget process, we held back some free cash and did not allocate it all. So at the end of last year, we had unallocated free cash of about $2.5 million. So one of the largest contributors to this $10.4 million is the fact that we did not allocate all of the free cash last year. If we had allocated all of our free cash last year doing the same mechanisms that the DOR does when we review this, we would have more than likely come in pretty close to $9.3 million again. So a lot of this additional money was actually created by the simple fact that we did not allocate all of our free cash last year. Again, as the town manager and I have discussed, we do have two enterprise funds that we substantially transfer and give subsidies to throughout the year, and we certainly have to make sure that those budgets are balanced, and those are things that obviously are going to be presented tonight. So that's a conversation that town administration and myself will continue to have on where we think those are going to end up. We do have a free cash policy that does, we probably should be adding some to stabilization. And I do want to make sure to caution everybody, while it's an extremely large number, I can't guarantee that we'll have this number next year. So I want to make sure that we really think about how we spend it, because the policy does indicate that we should be spending it on one-time events so that we're not automatically creating budgetary obligations in future years. So we've been very fortunate over the last few years to have been able to continue to create substantially good levels of free cash. And while I think we continue to do a good job, it should be noted with caution that I can't promise next year we'll have $10.3 million.
Brian, what are the other contributors? You said you were going to talk about contributors to free cash.
Well, a lot of it really is last year we raised about $3 million more in local estimated receipts than the budget, and we have taken that into account as we've started to build this budget and try to account for that a little bit. There was about $3 million turned back, which wasn't encumbered. The departments have done a really great job internally. We work very closely with them in making sure that POs that remain open at the end of the year are for the stuff that's been committed to be purchased. And so a lot of it was in terms of that. And truthfully, some of it is related to vacant positions that had been budgeted that were not filled until this fiscal year, or things of that nature, or not filling them. They may have been filled in fiscal 19, but it may have been a longer period of before we filled it than we had anticipated. So there's a lot of other factors that go into it as well. But we certainly, on a just a operational basis for fiscal 19, we still performed very well in and of itself. So we still would have generated a substantial amount of free cash. It just more than likely would not have been over $10 million.
Thank you.
Before we leave this, if you go to the general fund revenues, the pie chart, if you look at that, we were talking about sort of raising fees, et cetera, and how we did it a couple weeks back. And over 50% is local room tax and meals. And they are, it's over 50% of the general fund for this section. And there are a lot of other, very successful businesses on island that can contribute as well. And I make that point every time we talk about raising fees, et cetera. I think that we as a community need to ask everybody to share. So, I mean, I just think it's, the amount that that these specific businesses are paying is substantial, and others can too. So I hope that we start to look at that.
The only question I had, Brian, was just looking at the expenses. There was a jump from FY19 to 20 in the debt service.
Yep, and the debt service is related to the fact that this year there was some of the additional borrowings that we had done for the school department and for Nantucket Harbor Shimo versus having versus fiscal 19. They weren't included, and this was the first year of those, especially with Nantucket Harbor Shimo being state revolving money that was borrowed as we're going through the budget process. So those are where some of those increases are from.
Great.
And you mentioned,
Go ahead.
you mentioned the Airbnb tax, but has the marijuana tax revenue started to trickle in?
No, we have. I was looking through vendor web through all the state receipts, and I haven't seen it yet. And that's one of the questions that we have with this individual at the state is we would like to have them send us the schedule of when those payments actually will be distributed to the community, so that we can at least be looking for it and be prepared when it comes into, because we do have an allocation to make based on a town meeting vote.
Okay.
There's no more questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So just following.
Okay. So, as Brian
No.
said,
Oh, sorry, but I think we might just
Are we recessing?
recess for 1 minute so we can go upstairs very quickly. We'll come right back.
yeah, sure.
Okay, great. We just recess for a minute and we'll be right back.
Sorry, busted.
Good call on the handshake. I was frozen. Good call on the handshake.
We all good now?
All right, we will resume the meeting and ready for you, Brett.
Okay, so I'll go through this just like I do every quarter, start with revenues, breakdown of that, and then on to expenses. So, as Brian said, the first quarter is, again, first quarter. However, so far, the first quarter is looking promising. Our revenues, our booked revenue for quarter one for fiscal 20 was $1,041,000, which equivocates to 29% of the budget for the year, which is good. It's up about 12% from the quarter one of fiscal 19. The increase can largely be attributed to our census growth quarter to quarter, but just over the course of the first quarter in general was huge. Average reimbursement rates for Medicare Part A for the first quarter of fiscal 20, the average rate was $431.69 versus quarter one of fiscal 19, which was $481. That's about a $50 a day difference. However, it's not that, I don't believe it was the acuity. What happened is in July and August, we had a huge influx of Medicare A patients to the point where our therapy department didn't have enough minutes in their work week to cover everybody to the maximum reimbursement. So it's almost like sacrificed a little bit per resident, but still did really good in quantity and volume. And it's just something that came so fast. I mean, we jumped from a Medicare census of 2 to 10 in 9 days, which is unprecedented. It's good for revenue and everything, but you know, we didn't have enough time to really do anything to try to, you know, limited resources on the island for therapy also, especially during the busyness of the summer. They had other case mix stuff that they were working in the community also. Things have settled back down a little bit now, but I think that's why there was a difference in rates in general per patient day. From a Medicaid perspective, quarter one of fiscal 20, average rate was $212.09 versus quarter one of 19 of $205.78. That's about a $7 a day jump. About $3 of that is related to rate increases when they were updated. The rest of it is just acuity based, where there's a little bit higher acuity in the building. And that's continuing. Census numbers for the first quarter of 20 versus 19. In total census for fiscal 20 quarter one, 39.5 average daily census, whereas quarter one of fiscal 19 was 31.7. That's in 1 year's time an 8 average daily census increase, that's a huge movement in census in even a year's time. Usually you'll see an average daily census jump up 2-3 people over the course of a year. You might see fluctuations in case mix, but 8 in 1 quarter. Actually, all 8 happened in 11 days. So, which was also unheard of. Medicare A average daily census in quarter one of fiscal 20 was 5.2, and in fiscal 19, same quarter, was 2.6. So we had 100% growth in Medicare A patient days between the two. Medicaid, quarter one fiscal 20 was 28.1 census. Quarter one of 19 was 23.5 census, so a jump of about 4.5 there. And then private, this is the category that actually stayed the most consistent. Quarter one of 20 was 6.2. Quarter one of 19 is 5.6. Obviously, you can see, I mean, we had an increase in census across the board in every pay source, which we've maintained to an extent. I mean, our total census hasn't dipped even to this day below 37, and we're working on 2 potential referrals. So I think we've gotten back to where we normally run in the high 30s to low 40s, in that 37 to 42 range, and I think we'll probably stay there if based on all indications I can see. OIH expenses for the first quarter, they were down 31%, or around $700,000 compared to last fiscal year, same quarter, and represent 18% of the total annual budgeted expenses. That was about $1,535,588. Within that, though, there's 3 areas of expenses budgeted that we don't see the realized actual expenses until Q2. So if you, here I can actually, what are the expense lines? If you notice the three, the Barnstable County, the contractual obligations, and the general insurances, there's nothing on the fiscal actuals line, but there is a budget. So I went back and added in those three quarterly budgeted amounts to get a better picture of what it would look like, assuming we had them now. And it's still bringing us only to a total expenses of $1,760,588 on a budget of $2,127,14, which right now it's about $360,000 under budget at the end of first quarter. Again, being first quarter, there could be bigger expenses realized. It's not all roses by any means, because one of the categories we are over is professional services. First quarter of 19, first quarter of 20, we're 120,000 over. On a good note, we did accommodate some of that in the budget for the year, but we had to run with 2 travel nurses for the first 3 months of this year for the first quarter. However, we've hired additional staff, so we're back down to 1. So hopefully that's going to even out good. I mean, last year what we did was, as we ran down to the end of the year, we did have, we were under budget in wages and did a transfer through town meeting to operations from that. So if we're over in professional services, especially when it's due to travel nurses, we usually have some money we can transfer to offset what that, whether we'll have to do that, most likely we will, but the number I don't know yet, so I'll know better as it gets closer to the end of the calendar year, what we might be looking at. But I don't think it's going to be nearly as much. I believe last year we did 400,000, and I think we're not going to have to do that much this year.
Which is are they fairly equal, the professional services versus nursing, or one's more expensive?
Professional services almost double.
So you'd rather not be doing that?
Yeah, I mean, we're at a point now. We hired an RN that just finished, or is just finishing orientation this week, and we'll be hitting the floor running next week. And then we're in the process of hiring a second one. If I hire one more nurse, we can get rid of travel nurses altogether. So I'm hoping that, you know, the ads we're running quarterly in the American Nurse publications can net us one more, and then we can just get off that tilt altogether. So again, first quarter looking good. Still early in the fiscal year, but I mean, hopefully we'll keep on this pace from a revenue and expense side. Little side addendum. I don't necessarily have to get into it, but I know it's been a big topic, the 5-star rating and everything, 1 star. Even at the time I wrote this, we were still at a 1 star. However, there were changes coming because I was tracking like the quality indicators. It's actually updated. And when you go online, we're now a 2-star. Instead of being a 1 star, we've been 3-star, which is solid for surveys all along and since our last survey. But this not the one that just updated, but the one that we talked about back in July, we were 1-star staffing, 1-star quality. Quality indicators have gone up to 2, almost a 3. We're about 30 points off of jumping to a 3. And I anticipate, because I've been tracking the last 6 months of the quality measures, the numbers that were hurting us and dragged us down last quarter have been improving this quarter and are improving even more so for when they update the next quarter, to the point where I expect us to jump into the solid 3 category there. And the staffing, again, 4-star total nurse staffing, we've maintained that all along. The 1-star is based on the RN quality. The quarter that they have updated through is through the end of June. When in July, I reported that we had hired one RN already. She started June 9th. We are still 1-star, even though they've updated through the end of June, because we missed 7 days and the cutoff is 4. The last day that we haven't had an RN coverage for at least 8 hours in building was June 9th. Since then, through the end of September and into October, we've had RN coverage every day. And we just hired 2 new RNs also. So I don't think this is going to be a problem. So when that updates in January, I expect our staffing to jump from a 1 to a 4, which would also add another 1, possibly 2 stars on our total rating. So if everything keeps moving in the direction it is, I would expect that in January when it updates, we'll jump up to a 3-star, possibly 4 again.
Great.
So
that's good news.
It's a good thing, yeah. Stitch in time. So, any questions?
None at all. Thank you very much, Brett. And good news on the stars. Okay.
Good evening, Rob McNeil, DPW. Going through the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. Page 3 just highlights, it's a fairly consistent quarter, slightly down 4% from the quarter last year for revenues, 4% lower expenditures for the same quarter last year. Repairs and maintenance are down. The explanation there simply that the cardboard baler was at the beginning of last year, fiscal 19, and professional services is slightly up. That's because of the services of George Aronson and KP Law, supporting both additional time spent on Waste Summit matters as well as the Solid Waste Work Group. It's been meeting pretty regularly for the last year. So, I mean, fiscally, it's pretty well on track. Wanted to kind of update the board on a few other items related. Investing in the Solid Waste Recycling Coordinator has literally paid dividends through the DEP's Recycling Dividends Program. We just received a notice of a grant for $18,200, and it's a program through the state to provide payments to qualifying municipalities that have implemented specific waste reduction, reuse, and recycling programs and policies. There's more room for us to grow that grant opportunity, and it's an annual program. So that's something that we'll be able to participate further in, and those funds can be used for virtually anything related to our recycling and solid waste programs. And again, we're reviewing and making suggestions to overhaul several related regulations and policies. Our composter study, Matt, just to give you an update there, 2.0, the radio telemetry was a success to track the actual stainless steel bag through the composter. However, the steel mesh bag failed. So we weren't able to actually test the materials that made it through, but we were able to recover the bag. That was the first time. So we're continuing to reinvent the mousetrap, improve it each time.
I'm going to get you a great white shark to go through there. We can track those anywhere.
That's right.
I'm going to give you a shark and we'll just track it.
Moving forward with the colored lids for the municipal receptacles. A couple meetings ago, you voted to receive the grants through Remain, $60,000 for the Nantucket Data Platform dashboard, as well as just about $15,000 for the UMass Coastal Plastic Study that's underway. So thank you for that. We've had a really successful hazardous waste Summit follow-up meeting this past session on Thursday. We had some fantastic discussions, really good feedback from the limited people who did show, and I think there's going to be a lot of follow-up from that session alone. Reminder that this Saturday is our 5th of 6 household hazardous waste collection days for the season. So please attend. Upcoming Waste Summit events as well. Check the website. We have a project with WPI looking at developing a functional art project near the coast to address coastal litter, which is underway, which is pretty exciting as well. And we have been really pursuing recovery of textiles, books, and furniture from the take it or leave it. It's been something of a pet peeve of mine that we had back in Central Mass, and it's been sort of one of those things. It's small, but it's meaningful, and it's the right thing to do. So some partners are starting to fall together. We've been pursuing this for a long time, and it's finally starting to come together. And hopefully I'll have something to share in the coming weeks to be able to divert that from weekly disposition to the construction demolition debris stream to a off-island reuse stream, which would be fantastic. So,
Excellent.
thank you very much. Any questions?
I just had a question. The reduction in tipping fees, is that anything there's a correlation between decrease in building permits? Like, does that capture the C and D in the tipping fees? Like, do we sort of look at those together?
I think finance is tracking that. I can say we've had discussions with the previous finance folks about a correlation between the two. In the budgeting this year, we sort of we went high on the expenses and lower on revenue expectations, with an idea that the building permits were starting to level off.
Any other questions? None?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to give you a staffing study implementation update. And this is just an update for you all. It's not going to be overly detailed. As you will recall, we engaged the Novak Consulting Group to do a staffing study for us, which was completed at the end of 2018. And there were a lot of people interviewed, from staff to committee members to board members. It's a pretty large report. There are 104 recommendations, and they're both staffing recommendations and efficiency types of recommendations and other sort of operational recommendations. Can you go? I'm going to do it. And then Amanda and Greg can fill in where I might have a gap or something like that. Go next slide, please. Okay. So we've developed this sort of dashboard here, which shows in green the items that are complete, yellow the items that are underway, and red is either items that haven't started yet or haven't started yet. We've got a number of, sorry, go back one. Yeah. We've got a number of recommendations that were implemented or are going to be implemented in fiscal 20, with a number of positions that have been hired, approved for funding for fiscal 20, and a number have been hired. Some are in the process of being hired, and some just have not been posted yet. We also have, next slide, some efficiencies that have been implemented. These were identified in the report. I won't go through every single one of them, but they are pretty big achievements. And some of them are underway, as you can see, but all of them take a lot of coordination and staff resources to get going. And once they're really well underway, they're going to be really good for town operations. So they're all pretty much listed there.
Can I ask questions as we go, or do you want to wait till the end?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I was interested in the NeoGov. That's the performance-based system?
That is for performance evaluations, and it's something that Novak gave us some recommendations for, basically software to do it. We have struggled with a form to use for performance evaluations. And so we, HR did a lot of review of.
So they don't provide
companies.
it. We have to kind of build it within their system, a form.
Well, it's online, and so it provides, there's like a management position or an administrative position. So it gives you different sort of templates, kind of to do it. And then it just makes it a lot easier. You customize it for the particular individual, but they basically provide you with the format or the template, and they provide like some metrics and rating advice and things like that. But it's just all online.
My other question was, what was the patrol officer in operations? I didn't understand the in operations part for the new hires.
Patrol officer in operations does.
The last page.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah. What's in operations mean?
Yeah.
Is it just patrol officer?
Yeah.
Just in general? Okay.
As opposed to like in detective or something like that. Okay. So our next steps are to process any feedback that the board has, and actually, we had intended to do this at your meeting on October 16th, but wasn't quite ready, so that's why we're doing it tonight. We're cross-referencing select board strategic priorities, aligning our priority recommendations with fiscal 21 budget, so now there's a whole, sort of next phase of positions that may be recommended for fiscal 21, and we'll probably give the board another update after we have given our budget presentation later in December. And the last page here is just sort of a narrative on the study. Amanda or Greg, do you guys want to add anything? So it's, very much of an overview update. There's also in your packet the full dashboard of all of the recommendations and where we are with them, and it identifies what the recommendation is, what its status is, any comments about it, what its priority is, and who is responsible for implementation. And there's a lot of coordination on this. We are working towards, when I have one-on-one departmental regular meetings with the department heads, this is one of our agenda items. Where are we with some of the staffing study recommendations?
I just noticed some of them say that they need select board input, and just kind of wondering what the status is of those. It goes under the police department. Is there an internal work group or?
Let me try to get to that.
You could look at 58 maybe. Is that the one you're talking?
Well, some of them sort of span the strategic plan and or other policy issues that we will eventually need the board's input on. So for example, 55, discuss under police, develop sustainable employee housing and or affordable housing availability. This came up, I think, mostly with respect to police hiring in the study, but it is an issue that spans all departments. So I think we were just trying to get out there that it will require collective bargaining, but eventually there will need to be a select board policy as to employee housing. And that's just hasn't been developed yet, but we have a different internal work group working on that. So it probably means that at some point we will need to bring something to the board and review with you what, either a recommended policy is, or whether you want to even have a policy, or how we would recommend moving forward, but it will take your backing.
Yeah, there was a couple, like proactive police service, take-home vehicle or thing.
Yep, and some of those have just bigger policy ramifications that we wouldn't move ahead with until we've had some further discussion with you and or, is it a bargaining priority? That kind of thing. Are we ready for this kind of thing? What are the unintended consequences? That kind of thing. Okay, so that was the staffing study.
Just a quick question. It says it's a 3 to 18 month implementation time frame with all the things that haven't been started yet. Does that seem feasible within the 18 months?
It may even be more than that, depending on how quickly we can get to some of these things and how funding might be available. But if we keep at it, we were thinking that might be reasonable. I don't think we're going to get all 104 done in that time frame, but I think we'll make a really big dent in this. And there may be some things we aren't prepared to do and just aren't going to do. We don't have to do every single one of them. They just were recommendations.
Any more questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Libby's going to roll her eyes because every time we meet, I always talk about succession planning for the last 2 years. So I saw that on, I think it's number 4. And so it's done, but how do we, it's just really hard to implement succession planning with a lot of, if you look at all our departments in the next 5 or 10 years, there's a lot of institutional knowledge leaving, and how do we capture it? Is that something we need to talk about more or fund it more?
I'm not sure that it needs to be funded more. It takes a lot of internal discussion, though, and there are collective bargaining implications and some tricky things that municipalities have to deal with that private businesses don't with succession planning. But it is something that we're working to I think our angle right at the moment is to train people and give them supervisory training, leadership training, things like that, and then, you know, develop them into people who would be capable of taking on certain jobs. But it gets tricky in identifying, oh, this person is going to replace that person when that person retires. It's not quite that seamless.
Yeah.
Just there are a lot of factors that go along with it.
I'm excuse me, I'm more concerned of someone who's been here for 15, 20 years, a department head, and they leave.
Yeah.
What are they taking with them that we can't call them for, and how you
Yeah.
capture all that? It's
Yeah.
really difficult. But
It is really difficult.
we
And
were at that MMA forum about succession planning, and Cambridge was doing it. You remember, what are you laughing at?
Yeah, Cambridge does everything.
Well, they had a really good. It was really interesting that they were the way they did it.
Yeah,
And so,
no, I agree with you. And we really need to focus on getting that information out of people, like somehow getting them to, it is really hard, like document. Some of it's just not documentable.
Right.
But to the extent that we can pull it out of them before they go, we'll have to figure out like a sort of a methodology to do that.
But I always talk about having, sort of having the recommendations written down, having the understanding, why are we doing this, in the file. I mean, that part of why I do that is for that reason, so that, a board 5 or 10 years later, or a new hire or someone moving in another position has something to go back to. It's not just kept in one person's memory, so that's part of, in succession planning is one of the compact community best practices, and we're working on it, which is great. But I think that's why I talk about some of that is too much of it sometimes is just in someone, sort of, oh, that's just how we do it. Whereas it should be written down and understood and, and put away for the future. So how do you do that? And some of that is, we're too busy to do that. Well, you can't be too busy to do that. That's kind of the job. So how do we, change the culture so that becomes, part of the job? It's difficult.
So if there's any, if you ever need backing, for at least for me, on whether it's funding or bringing people in and for succession planning, I think it's important.
I'm just wondering if the management fellow program that has a red in the status, is that related at all to succession or no? Because some of these things, at least in business, succession, you see it happening with mentorship programs.
Number 10?
Yeah.
That is put on hold because that program requires you to house the individuals, and there just isn't that available right now.
And sorry, what is it? The Management Fellow Program?
It's a program through ICMA, International City Managers Association. And you basically would get like a student intern, like a master's degree level student to come help with a particular project. Mm-hmm. And they would be dedicated to that particular project, and they would stay with you for a period of time. And maybe they would take a job with you when that is done, and maybe they wouldn't. But and they get some credit for it. And so you get the benefit of, not paying them a lot, but we would need to house them. Okay. So it's something we want to keep on the radar, mm-hmm. but with all of the 104 recommendations, it wasn't something that we thought we should do at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. And at what point do we sort of look through these and say these are the ones that we're not going to tackle?
They'll probably sort out in the next 12 to 18 months, I would say. I mean, some of them we probably know right now. I don't know that I've identified them, right, that I could go through with you right this second. Mm-hmm. But I think as we move through them, they'll become clear.
Okay. So yeah, 12 months, we're still 12 months away from figuring out which ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. I think the report is done really well. It's very easy to read. And I like that you're using it. We keep using it over and over with your department heads. One thing I saw was the IT steering committee at some point over this winter, if we get a report or an update on what, because that was a big advantage of having, I think she's left, Karen, here, is be able to bring people together. And as technology becomes, as we start focusing on it more in our strategic plan, might not be ready yet, but put that on the list, the silver sheet.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So next is an update on the strategic plan. And you have more of a memo in your packet on this. This is something that Greg and Janet are more coordinating directly. Just to quickly go through the memo a bit. Again, we're trying to use this kind of dashboard-like process to identify what's on target, what's in process but needs more work, what's proceeding slowly, maybe it's even a little bit stalled for a particular reason, started but needs attention and isn't yet started or it just needs to be assigned internally. So as you recall, earlier in September, you adopted the revised strategic plan, which is in your packet, and the items that were updated as part of the revisions are included there. Housing, you've got 4 goals under housing, and I don't know if I'm really the one to go through all of the housing goals, but I'll just kind of touch on them, and then people are here to address particular questions about them if you all would like that. Safe harbor, achieving safe harbor status, that first goal in each of the next 3 years. We've received the safe harbor status for 2 years as of July 2019. And I think some of these things you all already know. So this is some of this is for the public. Goal 2, finalize a plan to address housing needs specifically for town employees, both year-round and seasonal. We have a pretty active internal group that is working on this, and there's a lot to it. We're trying to get an RFP prepared and for a kind of a feasibility and site design for seasonal town employee housing out here at the 246 Fairgrounds site. I think you all are familiar with it, over near where Waite Drive is eventually going to be. We're working on creating uniform leases. We're trying to figure out a third party that could potentially manage and or even maybe own the town employee housing. It would be specific to town employees, but there are some collective bargaining issues that potentially could be avoided if we had a third party managing. So we're looking into that. There's a lot to that. And we're working on the development of a town employee housing policy, which would try to lay out who's eligible for the housing, how long are they allowed to be in there, what would the rental payments be, where is it going to be? And we have some ideas on that, so we're really formulating through that now. Goals 3 and 4. 3, determine in greater detail the need for housing at all affordability levels. There's a Nantucket data project survey underway with the Affordable Housing Trust, and there's a grant from Remain to fund that, so that. Thank you. The report is due at the end of this month, so I'm sure that Affordable Housing Trust or Nantucket Data Platform will come in and you'll get an update about that. And goal 4, identify incentives to encourage homeowners to use secondary dwellings as year-round rentals. That's been assigned, I think, to the Affordable Housing Trust, or will be, to develop action steps and guidelines. Yes? Or, okay, it will be then. So we haven't gotten very far in that, in other words, but it's going to get underway. Any questions about the housing ones? More people here?
I was just wondering about the data platform because it's been on the radar for about a year, so I'm excited to see what they come up with.
They're due to deliver a report on around the end of this month, and then they're planning to come to the trust meeting, which is on the 19th of November, and make a formal presentation of their findings.
Thank you.
And then goal 4 could if there's any bylaws or anything in town meetings, it'll be for not this April, the following April, or it could be regulations, or it could be for a second dwelling as year-round rentals. Just curious what would we be doing?
Yeah, and I think that's something the Affordable Housing Trust hasn't looked into yet, but I think that's exactly what we would be looking at, is where's the best place to start to tackle that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, environmental leadership has 2 main goals. One is to provide data-driven recommendations on island-wide solid waste management guided by principles of sustainability, and there are a number of initiatives underway in furtherance of this goal. They're all listed here. I won't go through every single one of them, but one of them relates to meeting on a regular basis. Rob's been holding, as you know, solid waste summit meetings about monthly to gather information from the public, take public input, give information out to the public, all of which eventually will be compiled and start to work towards a long-term plan for when the waste options contract expires in 2025. And there's just a lot of information to pull together. There's a lot of things to be looked at, and we're running down a whole number of things in connection with that. Also, some of the stuff listed there, reviewing trash hauler regs. We're doing that now and trying to really get a handle on the trash hauler issues and our issues and how to kind of, integrate them together so that we're working together on our trash problems. Goal 2, finalize an island-wide long-term water quality management plan that addresses all of those items listed there. This is underway with natural resources. And we're looking at the possibility of engaging a consultant to help us put all of the initiatives, projects, programs of all the departments into one central plan so that it can be tracked and different measurements established and things like that. So that's all underway. And some things have already been occurring. The pond management principles were presented to the board in August. We've been presenting the board annually with a water quality update. We've got a lot of stormwater management activities underway, and so lots of things going on with that.
And I believe we're going to see more of an update from Natural Resources in the next couple of weeks. I think getting all of the information together before we can really collate all of these plans is what they've been working on, but I've been told that's about 2 weeks away. So we'll have more of an update on where they are, and I think that will also help get us to the next phase of this goal.
Okay, transportation. There's 3 goals there. Launch a downtown parking management system based on demand management principles. As you know, that is well underway, and you have we've given the board a couple of paid parking updates recently, and you have a public hearing on November 6th. Goal 2 is to complete at least one key sidewalk route connection from Mid-Island to the ferries, and I think you know that a lot of that is underway, specifically with regard to the Newtown Road project and projects along Orange Street, Sparks, Williams, and Pleasant. And
Olivia, I hope we can see those contracts here soon for Orange, Sparks, Williams, and Pleasant. I know they're scheduled to be done the 23rd. I know things get in the way.
I will have to look at where those are. I'm not totally sure.
Not that anything's going to get done before this next summer, but hopefully for the next summer.
Goal 3, shift the mode of choice of commuters from driving alone to using other modes by 6%. There are some PR campaigns underway. Remain has really been helping with this a lot with their More Nantucket program. Is that what it's called? And Janet may know a little bit more about that, but that really is promoting other modes of transportation. The shuttle, bikes, walking, carpooling, all of that kind of thing. So that's just probably, ongoing.
I had a question about that. When we had discussed this goal, we kind of said, what is the 6% reduction and how are we going to track that? So is there also any sort of initiative to engage the data platform or to track some sort of vehicle usage data point?
I do not know right at this moment about that, but I feel like there is.
Schulte, Culture and Tourism. I believe the last time we talked about that, we thought that when the automobiles with the parking systems are going to go around, we'll be able to do some tracking in that way. So we stopped any conversations about the data platform and waited for that solution.
Thanks.
I think with goal 3, we can, infrastructure improvements help that. And I think we need to put more time into NERDA and in helping NERDA lead and look at different things that connects to goal 3. So I think we should put that on an agenda coming up.
Yeah. It's just hard to measure 6% if we don't know the baseline.
Right. Yep.
And specifically the agenda item is looking at the measuring.
I think with goal 3 in mind, what are some other things how do we improve NERDA? You know, we always kind of talk about it randomly, but I don't think we put enough time into, setting goals, and if we need to spend more funding on getting more opinions on how we can improve NERDA, and be really ready for that once the paid parking goes in. Like things are going to move fast, and are we going to be ready? Is there cost to it? From different routes to shuttle buses, does that go under NERDA? Does it go somewhere else?
Right. Janet?
The American Census Survey also tracks data on use. It's randomly done by just before the census each year. I got a survey this year. I was selected, and it had several questions about how I commuted to work. And there's plans to find that, to use that data too. Mike Burns pointed that out to me.
Okay, thank you.
Efficient town operations was another area where 2 new goals were added, a facility master plan. And this is something that I know is a high priority, and we're having some internal discussions about how to get at this and get some stakeholders together and probably engage some kind of consultant to help us look at all town facilities as far as kind of a condition assessment and needs assessment, and then just run through a bunch of different scenarios about where things could move, where things could consolidate, where things might be built, things like that. And investment in technology, I don't know that a lot has been done there other than the IT assessment and recommendations that were completed in 2017, and then the establishment of the IT steering committee, which is meeting regularly about IT requests and IT projects. And so we'll get an update from them, as you mentioned earlier.
Sure. Well, I think on the quality of life, this is brand new. We just did this in July. And what is are we going to meet sometime this off season to dig into quality of life? I can't remember what our plan was.
I think you said you wanted to keep that on your kind of goal program, but without a specific goal identified just yet, and keep it on there. And things may surface throughout the year that you would then incorporate into a specific goal for your update for 2020 maybe. And perhaps this has already happened a little bit with the board's vote last week about the beach access issue. So that would tie in to this.
I think one thing for the board to think about is some type of social vulnerability index. So, and I think data platform's kind of doing that already, of where people live. So where are elders in flood zones, that type of thing. But for us to have some kind of index, or at least keep it in mind, just as an example, I don't think we're doing this, but as an example, are we building all new sidewalks where wealthy people live, right? Just things like that. Where are we putting our money? Just try to look at it in a lens for like all demographics. So something like that. Some other towns and cities have done social vulnerability index. I brought it up with the sustainability consultant. We had a good conversation about it. So maybe that falls under there, but something like that could go in this area.
Yeah, I think at some point it's been so helpful to have guidance from Novak and first from Janet in developing the strategic plan. This seems like a goal that can go so many different directions. It might be helpful to have some help as a board to identify what quality of life means to each of us, and then to the community at large, and then be able to focus in on what some of the areas are to pursue. So at some point, but I like where you're going with it, Jason. I think, again, there are a lot of different ways we could go. So I think at some point it might be helpful. I just had a question, Libby. The facilities management plan, does that include all properties, regardless of whether there's a facility on it, or just properties with facilities?
Well, I think it would initially include all properties with facilities, and then we could certainly identify town properties that don't have facilities for potential placement of a facility on them. But we would probably need some criteria as to what to look for that.
Yeah, it just seemed sometimes when we talk about this could go here, this could go there, occasionally properties would come up that didn't really have anything on it existing, or a property where the current building was no longer useful. And I'm just hoping that the plan can give us, when we're looking at deciding where things could move, that the plan would be able to give us that big picture look at all the options available.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. That we're going to need to take a little bit of time to develop a scope for that, and that is going to probably be somewhat put on the back burner for now because we're right in the middle of developing town meeting and the budget, and those two things alone are taking quite a bit of time, and they need a lot of attention. So this facility, I mean, hopefully we'll be able to get to the development of a scope and get it out maybe before the end of the year, but that in itself is a pretty big project.
Is it reasonable, the original 3 areas of focus in their goals had a 3-year time frame for implementation? I'm just wondering, it's something that came up last time we spoke about the strategic plan, is that looking at each new thing that we add, understanding what that time frame is. I mean, it would make sense to me if we continue to use 3 years as that time frame unless we find otherwise, just so that it doesn't have to be a back burner. It's just that it doesn't happen immediately because it's a 3-year implementation. But I don't know if we had any clarification on that, really.
I don't think you really did.
Any other questions?
Sorry, I guess I'm not understand what you're asking. Do you mean when we come up with a new goal, like that starts to 3 years?
Well, I think that's something that as we added to it, the original plan was meant to be a 3-year plan, and we looked at each of the goals, and the department heads revised them based on how feasible they were in that 3-year time frame. So as we add new goals, in terms of understanding how we're going to attack them, how do we designate a time frame? I think it was easy, again, the first go round, because it was just told to us that it was 3 years. So I think that was something that when we had the revised plan, I was commented on, was just that I would like to see a time frame for each of the goals going forward as we add them.
Okay.
I thought that was helpful.
And that may take reprioritizing. If under quality of life, we've identified that, keeping our beaches from being, having ropes into the water on our beaches, if that moves something, some other goal may have to be moved, and we have to be able to understand, we have to be flexible and understand that. There's going to, under quality of life, there are certain things like that, I would say, that are really important that may sort of rise to the top and bump something slightly. And I don't think, that's...
Well, I just want to reiterate that I think the strategic planning process has been invaluable to this board, and I would like to see it continue. But also I think having timeframes that we can think about the goals was one of the very helpful parts of it, because we could keep it not too big picture, but achievable.
I agree.
Any more questions? No.
Okay, the monthly town management activities report. Again, I'm just going to touch on these things. I'm not going to go into them in a whole lot of detail. And these are just mainly highlights of things that we've been working on. Most recently, it's not all inclusive. We've got a number of plans, reports, and studies underway. We've obviously are continuing to work on the staffing study and the strategic plan, as we just discussed. The Coastal Resiliency Plan is in process with the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. The sustainability office structure, the consulting work is underway. Everybody was interviewed within the last couple of weeks. We've received a grant to develop a climate action plan, so that will get underway with the energy coordinator. As you know, you recently had a presentation about the sewer rate study, and you will be having a public hearing before the end of the year on sewer rate increases. Number of meetings going on internally and externally. Lot of meetings about the fiscal 21 budget with the departments, capital project reviews with Capcom. The Comcast license renewal is somewhat stalled with Comcast, and that has been somewhat of a tedious effort, but we're slogging away at it. Preparations for upcoming collective bargaining for contracts that expire June 30th, 2020. A lot of prep going on for that. I attended the monthly Steamship Authority meeting at the end of September. A lot of meetings regarding long-term planning for the landfill, and we typically annually have a postseason beach meeting. We talk about any issues that came up that might need some attention next year. A lot of projects underway. You're going to be getting an update shortly as to the Harbor Master building design. We're still trying to work at the old fire station. The new fire station, we're going to get a report for you on that. That is somewhat stalled with the, I don't know if Chief has any more of an update, but we're probably, I hope it's okay to say this, but looking at potential legal action to get that project completed.
Good evening. Actually, this week and last week have been a little progress over there. We had a good 5 weeks where there was no activity from the general contractor. The past 2 weeks and this week, there's been a lot of activity. One of the major problems with the new building is the HVAC plant. They had people in the beginning of the week, all the parties involved, and the first time, it sounds really silly, but for 2 days, the plant hasn't gone into alarm or shut down. So we're making progress. There's a possibility, I hate to say a timeline, but it's getting closer than it was. I'm not going to say, it just jinxes me. It jinxes me. So, but I can say there is progress and the possibility of a, coming to an end and us actually being able to move in soon. So.
You're better off doing what you're doing, which is making sure everything's right, than going in and then fighting and dealing with this after.
I'm learning a lot, and Deputy Gibson is the one who's really been teaching me a lot with this. And without him, this would probably be different. But with this whole process, and that's exactly what it is, we're not moving into a building that's not finished to what it's supposed to be as to the contract.
And this happens in the private sector as well. People get to a certain level and they feel like they've got a certain amount of profit they expect, a certain amount of work, and even though it hasn't finished, you end up in this position. And a lot of times they just counting on people going, oh, well, what's the big deal? And you really can't. And it's smart to sort of got to keep going.
Yeah.
So a lot of other projects are either underway or in the sort of planning stages, or we're working on them. Senior Center, Our Island Home, the Town Pier, Energov with e-permitting, and that recently, a part of it went live. Yes? The Energov went live, a little bit of it? Yeah, could you just quickly say? Sorry, I put you on the spot, Karen. I'm sorry about that.
Good evening, Karen McGonigal, Chief Technology Officer. This week we launched the back-end part of the Energov e-permitting system. This is the part that the offices use. We launched permits in all of the plus departments, health and sewer. And so far it's been going pretty smoothly, fingers crossed. Our next phase is to develop the online citizen portal and payment system.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Is that sometime in 2020? The customer-facing side?
Hopefully. Yep. 2020, maybe customers will be able to. Yep. A lot of effort has gone into this, and I really want to thank Karen and Greg and everybody else who's been involved in it. It's a real big effort. As you know, our Community Compact Grant project is underway with HR and collective bargaining best management practices. We expect our consultant to give you a report sometime in the next couple of months, hopefully sometime in December. We're trying to schedule that now. Paid parking, of course. The strategy regarding public beach access, there's going to start to get to be some internal discussions about that need to get underway. Milestone Road, the plastics ban outreach, and a lot of meetings going on with that, employee housing, the 2020 annual town meeting, and 3 of us just came back from the ICMA annual conference. It was in Nashville this year. They said it was the largest conference they had ever had with attendees, and between Rachel and Greg and myself, we covered a lot of workshops, a lot of focus on strategic planning and performance management and innovation and collaboration. We met up with a lot of our colleagues, and I would say it was a really good conference for us to have gone to.
What was your biggest takeaway?
That's a good question. What was my
or one of them?
I attended a particular workshop with Rachel when it was maybe the first one. It was about social media, and everybody in the room from all of the towns, and it was a smallish group, but I would say it was pretty representative, struggles with social media. Municipalities struggle with it, and everybody kind of talked about, well, what do you do about the Facebook pages? And what do you do about all these different things? So I think that a big takeaway was everybody has that problem. And some municipalities are better than others at getting it out there. It depends on a lot of different things, how much money you might have, the quality of the people that you have doing it. Some managers were saying they manage it. They have a Facebook page. I don't even know how they would have time for that. But the takeaway, I think, was you need to dedicate resources to it. And you need to get your story out there so that the public will understand things and hopefully support things, but understand, why towns are doing things. So it's important for us. We don't have enough of that. And I think we're going to need to make some more investment in that area. That was a big theme that I heard from people. We got some personnel vacancies out there right now that we're working to fill. The Assistant DPW Director for Facilities, the Capital Projects Manager, and the Collector. That's it.
Great. Thank you. So we're moving on to committee reports. Anyone have anything to share? Yep.
Did you want to talk about the hazardous
Go right
waste?
ahead.
Or we can just talk both about
Yeah.
it? So I had time to go to one of the Waste Summit meetings, the hazardous materials, hazardous waste?
Hazardous waste.
Waste, and which we have six a year. And it was a really good conversation. Rob already alluded to it in his solid waste presentation. Maybe 10, 12 people there, but it was haulers, it was people from Sustainable Nantucket. Rita and I were there. Some people who are in the industry, who are laborers and landscapers. So it was kind of, it touched all different viewpoints. And I learned a lot on kind of how the state runs things, what we can do, and what it actually would take to have a facility where anybody could just go and drop off hazardous waste. I mean, it's not as easy as just having a little building and walking away. It's very problematic. So we're trying to figure out how to be creative with it. And there's a little bit of room that the state might work with us on some different things and programs. So I was, I don't know what you thought, Rita. I walked away feeling pretty good about that.
No, I thought it was a very positive meeting, and it was great. I actually think it was upstairs instead of down here, so it was an opportunity for it to be more conversational. And I thought that it was more solution-focused coming from the audience than we'd had at some of the other ones. And the haulers were there and had some excellent input. And I think particularly with hazardous waste is one where everybody's behind doing the right thing. There are quite a few logistics that we face that make it difficult. One of the things they talked about is a pickup service. But because of all the rules and regulations around a pickup service, it makes it maybe not feasible as a business to do that. So it went really well, and I believe we have 3 more, each with a different topic. 2 more. 2 more. And so I think it's well worth attending to understand what the community is worried about, and again, encouraging anyone, to attend as well, because the input has been excellent. Any other committee reports?
I just had a plastics ban update. We met with NIR. They have a sustainability office. I actually missed that meeting, so maybe Janet could give a little update. But then we also met with the nonprofits to talk about their summer events and trying to go plastic free at those events. So I think both meetings went really well. One of the things that I learned is that NIR distributed 100,000 single-use water bottles last year. So we're really, we're going to make a difference with this ban, hopefully. So I think they're really on top of it. It was really interesting from the hospitality standpoint to see kind of how they're going to manage the single-use plastic ban, and kind of how do they cater to the elite class that they cater to, and also, deliver the quality of service that they want to. And then the nonprofits, most already go plastic free at all of their summer events. So I think all of them are on board, and we kind of brainstormed ideas of kind of how do you get refillable water bottles, like how do you get refillable water to people at large events, by renting bubblers or having things from Want to Come at Water. People are so used to just giving out little plastic water bottles, so it was a good meeting.
I shared, along those lines, an article about, I think it's Dunkin' Donuts and another place are shifting. I shared it with Rita, with Emily Molden, and they're shifting from styrofoam to the paper cups. But when you actually dig into what they're shifting to, the paper cups are just like, the beer mugs. They're sprayed with a little bit of plastic inside. So are you, and I'm not in favor of styrofoam or plastic, but you have to realize that plastic is everywhere in there. And so are you trading, and no one has an answer to this, are you trading, what is the microplastics that we're finding in the ocean? Is it really the lining of beer cans? Is it stuff that's going through our landfill? Is it going through the composter? So sometimes we think that we're doing the right thing by going to paper, but the paper itself is lined by plastic that's leaching even worse. So it's very, very complicated.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things that we've been talking to people at so the plastics ban work group has been meeting with a lot of different stakeholders, and it's to inform people and also ask if they have questions. And we've been trying to go to, restaurants, yacht clubs, everybody. But one of the things we've been talking about is so many people have switched to that boxed water, and then Graham's been really informing everybody that that's actually worse for our landfill, and aluminum cans are better. And obviously the best thing is a reusable water bottle. But we've had to inform people, and the Dreamland already has shifted. They, switched this summer to the boxed water, and now they're trying to switch to something different. They're also trying to stop all plastic, even soda and everything else. So I think it's kind of interesting to see all the nonprofits jump on board.
Reusable popcorn bins?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yeah, have you seen their new? They don't have the cups anymore. They have bags.
Nice.
Yeah. But it's sort of, they're making businesses about this, but they're not necessarily, some of the quote-unquote solutions are not necessarily anything better than they replaced. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, they're worse. And so it's sort of, we want to do the right thing, but sometimes you have to dig deep enough to kind of figure out what the right thing is. So, that's kind of the interesting part to me, is how do you look at the whole picture and really come up with the right solution.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a major overhaul of habits and the way that we look at it. So I just have one quick one from Board of Health. There was discussion about a genetic mouse steering committee. So it has to do with the MIT project, and one that we anticipate a report back on, I think, in and around 2025 was the timeline. But there's a feeling, particularly from one or two of the board members, that having a group that possibly has a select board member on it that sort of keeps apprised of what's going on nationally, internationally, within MIT and the other islands that they're thinking about releasing the mice on. It would be good to keep apprised of that well up until 2025, so that we're not surprised by anything. So there'll be more coming on that. And that's it.
Yeah, I've got, last week when we were talking about the beaches, Fran was sending me corrections, and I wasn't speaking quite properly. But one of the things, she also sent me some of her, different things she's written, and I think, and I asked permission, and occasionally I will sort of read it. Today, one she sent was on ponds. What does a controversy about fishing in Nantucket's ponds have to do with New York? In the spring of 1954, 2 young Nantucket men were arrested by the game warden for fishing in Long Pond without a mass fishing license. Judge Carolyn Levin heard the case, and the issue was presented by attorney George M. Polland, who asserted that Judge Levin's ruling in the case would be the most important piece of litigation on the island in more than 100 years. Polland cited Nantucket history back to the 1660s, with special attention to the conveyance of Nantucket from New York to Massachusetts in 1692. Previous to that, in 1647, the Mass Bay Colony had passed an ordinance about the rights of the public to the great ponds, those over 10 acres. But Polland pointed out that this ordinance did not apply to Nantucket, which was not part of Massachusetts Bay Colony at the time. He argued that in the 1670s and 1680s, while Nantucket was still under the jurisdiction of New York, a series of grants to the Nantucket proprietors included the ponds. In 1841, the proprietors granted rights to Long Pond, where the defendants were fishing, the Nantucket Ditch and Nantucket Harbor to the town of Nantucket, while retaining rights to the other ponds. The ponds of Nantucket never changed their status as private property, and regarding the fish in these ponds, they are as much private property as your honor's goldfish, Polland asserted. I like that line, which is why I read that tonight. Judge Levine made the decision that the state of Massachusetts had no rights regarding Nantucket's ponds and found the defendants not guilty. Her decision left the game warden and the town clerk in a quandary about issuance of state fishing license and enforcement of state law, which is carried through to today. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Fran. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimous.